I hate the office as well. Although our office is pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah?
Like arcade games and shit in it. So that's probably the main thing that's driving me. But then when you add, and I'm also running out of cash, it's a good combo to make you actually do something.
What sort of clicked for you guys to sort of bring it to the next level? So you guys were tweaking it along the way rather than mapping it all out.
I think in the beginning we're like, we want to be here in 2 years. We sort of knew how big we wanted it to be in 2 years. We've almost gotten to that level. It stopped us being complacent at the beginning. Like when you've got a little bit of money coming in, you're like, okay, this is good, but I want to hit $1 million a year, and we're currently doing, $10K a month. So let's not be happy with $10K a month. How are we going to get, what do we need to do to get to $1 million? What do we need to do next? What do we need to do next? What do we need to do next? And we probably just took it one step at a time. It was first going from 0K a month to 10. And then it was like, how do we get from 10 to 20? And then, all right, we're at 20, but how are we going to get to 50? And then so on. And that's kind of been the way that we've steadily moved forward. Getting from 0 to something was probably the hardest. And then from there, it's been incrementally, I think, easier to kind of grow because you know more and more what you're doing and how to grow.
How has your little milestones changed along the way depending on your outcomes?
In the beginning, the milestones were more about building the business. So like by the end of this month, we want to have created our project management system that the lawyers will use. And so we're focused on working out how that system works and tweaking it. And this doesn't work, this does work. And or it would be, how are we going to get our sales team, which by the way, in the beginning, like there's 2 people. So I was the sales team and Tomo was the legal team, and we both wore multiple hats. But thinking about it in those terms, we're thinking about almost like business creation. Those are the milestones that you have. Once you've created the core of the business, it becomes a lot more about the numbers. So now most of our milestones are financial based. How are we going to hit this revenue next month? How are we going to hit these amount of sales? We worked out some numbers that we measure the business by, built out a sort of financial plan. And it's very much just about probably the thing that's driving us, at least at the moment, and it may change as we get to even the next phase of the business. But at the moment, we're focusing on growth. So I'd say the milestones are really like, did we hit the numbers that we want to hit each month? We still do the product development stuff and technology development. And there's now different teams within our business that do different things. So those teams will have their own little milestones. But I think looking at it from the big picture, and I say this to a lot of people, it's like at the beginning of the business, it's all about product. It's like, what are we doing? And that's what you focused all your efforts on. And then when it gets to like this stage, and I haven't been to the next stage yet, so I don't know what's next, but at this stage, it's like almost more about accounting than it is about product development, or at least as a manager trying to grow it. It really comes down to the numbers more than anything else.
So do you feel like you've sort of developed a different set of skills just to complement the business as it grows? And have you sort of been consciously trying to do that, or do you just try to do it as it goes?
That is, another awesome question. I think for sure the amount of skills we've had to pick up is phenomenal. We're lawyers, and both of us were not only lawyers, but we were like arts law students. So we didn't really know much about numbers. I'd say we both have like numbers brains, but we didn't study finance or anything like that. And I think, so that's probably been one of the biggest learning curves, is like when you're running a business, it's so much about the numbers and understanding, how to read a balance sheet and P&Ls and all that kind of stuff. So that's been a big skill set that we had to pick up. I'd say like it's been a bit of both. So, and sorry, in addition to that, digital marketing, like most of our work comes from digital marketing. I did run this digital agency, but not really at the scale that we're at now. So there's been a lot of learning there. And then operations, like every area of a business, you got to develop some sort of knowledge, HR, recruitment, how to run interviews, all this kind of stuff. So lots of different learnings. Most of it has been, it's emerged along the way as a thing we needed to learn, because we're like, why are we finding it so hard to recruit people? This is so hard. Oh, wait, there's a whole industry called HR. Maybe we should learn about HR. So it kind of came up that way. But then once you identify the problem, I did go out and like learn about it, read books about it. I did like an online MBA or something at one point, like didn't pay for it, just did free online MBA courses. And that really helped just to give me like a understanding of some of the issues. So I'd say a combo of like going out and doing a little bit of formal learning, but most of it would just be like, we have this problem in the business. We need to solve it. We don't know how to solve it. So we need to like teach ourselves right now. Yeah.
It's like a sink or swim kind of situation.
Yeah, sink or swim. Yeah.
And with most startups, I think like one of their milestones is when they actually first hire someone. So how was that experience like for you, and how did you figure out who would sort of be the right fit to start your company up with?
Yeah. We started actually by hiring some friends, which was really easy. And I was fortunate enough to have worked in a previous, again, the first job I ever had out of high school was this awesome startup company that grew really big, really quick. And I worked there with like 7 to 8 of my friends. And we all worked there for about 5 years. And so I think hiring friends is a thing that definitely can be dangerous. But with the friends that we hired, I'd worked with them for 5 years before. I was at one point appointed like a manager. So I'd managed one of them before, and like very close friends, but I sort of knew how it would pan out in a work context. So yeah, first 2 hires were friends. And that made it easy because there's just an element of trust. You don't need to worry about whether they're going to do their work, and you sort of know exactly what their work weaknesses are because you've worked with them before. That made it really easy. But then the first hire that wasn't a friend, our first full-time hire, yeah, that was a bit of a milestone. Sort of worrying about having to make enough money to pay them. Because even like it's like on your training wheels with friends, because with friends, it's like we need enough money to pay them, but they're also fully aware of what we're trying to do. They know all the risks. Like worst come to worst, if we told them we couldn't pay them for a month, they wouldn't care. But having to tell that to someone that's left their full-time job to come join you, oh, we can't pay you. You don't want to be in that situation. So our first full-time hire was a little bit like, we got to make sure it again forces you to really up your game and make sure that you've got enough work coming in. And that was probably the point that we started really looking at numbers and working out how much this person cost us, how much we're going to bring in. And then I guess management, as we increased that to sort of 2, 3, 4 non-friend hires, which has been most of the rest of our hires except for those first 2. Yeah, it started to become a bit of okay, we need to build a management structure. We need to think about like company values. We need to really create a bit of like a real business here. Like it's almost, and you're sort of pitching yourself when it's happening, because you're like, oh, okay, all those things when I was an employee that I took for granted, we now have to create. I'd say, yeah, there was a period of like, this is weird, this is a bit stressful, and then it just becomes your status quo, and it has been for a couple of years now. So.
And you're comfortable with it?
I don't think you're ever really fully comfortable with it. And that's the thing with being an entrepreneur and running like a business which employs people, which I think is very different to running like a very small operation like the first one I did. You can never really switch off, and at all times, it's possible everything could break tomorrow. And so, it means that your sleep is not as nice as you would like it to be, but you definitely get used to it, I think. And so... I'm still a little bit probably stressed at all times, but I'm kind of used to having that feeling of stress, and so it's okay. Yeah.
Is this your current state right now? Are you stressed?
A little bit, but yeah, probably not heaps. I mean, like every month, some little thing goes wrong. We've had some things that happened in the last month, but I would say like the things that happened in the last month, like the first time they happened, like when the equivalent of this happened a year and a half ago. I had like the most stressful month of my life. I'm like, oh no, everything's going to go wrong. And then over the last month, I'm like, oh, it's another really stressful thing. Well, this is a bit stressful, but everything will be fine. And then it was fine. And so like, I guess I'm probably better at managing that feeling, but it's still there. Yeah.
You're quite involved in startups from quite early on.
Yeah.
Were you always interested in that? Or did you come from sort of an entrepreneurial family or?
Didn't come from an entrepreneurial family at all. Well, that's probably a disservice to my parents. They're definitely like a sort of intellectual, creative family. Both my parents were academics and liked ideas and things like that. But neither of them had really started businesses or anything. And both worked in the sort of public sector, so weren't that focused on money or anything like that. I think it probably came more from the technology side. from a small age, I was really into technology, just as like a, I don't know, hobby. I mean, everyone in my generation was into sort of like gaming and stuff as kids. And that's kind of maybe where it begins. And then, but I was probably a bit more than the average person, just into sort of computers. And I was trying to make websites when I was, 8 years old or whatever it is. And then I became the person through high school of like, people would call me if they had some problems with their computers or whatever. And I sort of was the techie person. And that was a little bit of my identity, not a huge part. Part of my identity was being a tech savvy person. When it came to university, even though I studied law, which was a weird thing to do, I would have thought I would have done computer science or something, I still loved the technology stuff and only ever really wanted to work in like techie sort of places. And so the first company I worked at was like an internet company. And the reason that I loved the job and stayed there for so long was because it was like using my tech skills basically all day. I think what you do with your first business, it's sort of like writing your first song as a musician. You just like plagiarize someone else's. So you find your influences and you do something very similar. So we just looked at some other digital agencies around in Sydney and we're like, oh, here's some other businesses. Their packages are on their website. Let's just do the same thing, but 50% cheaper. And we're like, at that time, we're like, $500 is heaps of money. So we created our own website, which we just worked out how to do. Came up with a logo on Microsoft Paint and just went online, went on to Gumtree or something and started responding to people's ads that I need a website. And then didn't really work very well. Although we did get a couple of clients. But it was pretty clear that like things like brand really mattered to people. And then like sales is one of the most important things, which we didn't realize that in the first version of the business. And, we had to put a bit more effort into like, how are we going to actually convince someone to give us money? And there is such thing as too cheap as well. So we tried sort of 3 different versions of the brand and tried to work out what's going to make us stand out from the crowd rather than just be a copy of the crowd. And so then we adopted Spider, which was sort of a forward-thinking, cool name. And we thought, okay, we're going to target traditional businesses with an innovative brand or innovative seeming brand. And so we didn't want to go too crazy because that would put them off. But we didn't want to go too traditional or we're just the same as everyone else. So we created the sort of brand, worked out a business model. Originally, we thought we were going to outsource stuff, but then that didn't work at all because the quality was really bad of the sites that we got back. So we ended up teaching ourselves how to code and using sort of WordPress to make websites. Met heaps of people who worked in digital agencies and got proposals from them and sort of worked out how people did the marketing thing. And again, it was, I suppose, in a similar way, just through facing problems, developed a business model and a proposition and started getting clients. The clients that we got, if you do a really good job with one, they refer you to everyone else. And digital agencies was good because we did sort of low volume, high value jobs. So we didn't have to do heaps in a year to make good money. We just did some really big jobs for sort of big traditional businesses. And just being techie, like you can really add value to those businesses who are like scared of the internet. You can say, don't worry, I can communicate with you and explain the proposition. So I think that was a kind of organic growth. You also got a lot of return work from your same clients. So we built up a small client base and it got to the point where like we could have really grown it beyond what it was. And so after I graduated, I worked on the business for probably like 9 months full time, just really doing it. And we had a little sort of team going, but then decided that I had this law degree, had this law job, and I was like, I should be a lawyer and see what that is. I probably didn't see a massive future in web design. So we sold the business. It wasn't a huge exit. It wasn't like a big success story. It was just, we sold it to another person that wanted to run an agency. It was kind of a nice ending of that story. But yeah, there's the story of that business for you.
And you did mention at one point that you thought it was weird that you ended up studying law rather than computer science. So what happened there? What made you go for law instead of computer science at uni?
I don't really know, to be honest with you. I think I was probably, if you asked me from year 5 to 10, I would have said I'm going to study computer science. And then I went to a very competitive selective school. I did pretty well in English and history, and I really found a love for like arts sort of things like late in high school, whereas I'd previously been into computers and maths and stuff. And so in that period of deciding what I was going to study, I was really in love with like arts, but I also wanted to do something. If you get a really high mark, you want to get into something that reflects your high mark sort of thing. And that was kind of the thinking of this selective school, which I didn't want to do an arts degree because it was not going to sort of match whatever mark I got in high school. And law seemed like the smart person's version of arts. If I was to be honest, of like a degree that was based on writing and thinking and all those sorts of things. When I actually studied law, it was not at all that. It was completely different.
Yeah.
But I kind of just found myself in a law degree by that point and was like, well, I should probably finish this thing because I've started it. I did arts law, so the arts half was really fun. But after a few years, I got really back into the technology stuff. I'm still sort of glad that I studied law because it's kind of more exciting and interesting to bring to that sort of world, the technology, rather than just being a pure technologist, at least for me, I think. So, yeah.
You recently won the Australian Law Awards Innovation of the Year.
Yeah, Innovator of the Year.
Yeah, so you're the law firm that wins that award this year. How does that feel?
Pretty good, yeah. I guess it was good. We beat out some of the big sort of traditional firms as well who have innovation departments. And I think just good validation for what we're doing. Particularly the last 6 months, we've sort of won a few awards, and it feels like there's not really any award in entrepreneurship for doing well except stuff like this. And particularly when you're running a thing that started off in someone's apartment and has turned into a business, but it happens so gradually. Having some sort of recognitions of like you've finished something or you've achieved something feels good and lets you reflect on like, okay, we've come from nothing to something that is leading this industry in some way. Yeah, good. And a time for reflection, I think. Although all that said, like an award is an award, and I think the real test of the business will be how big can we make it and how long will we survive. But it's a nice thing for sure.
How do you envision SPRINTLAW would grow in the next 2 to 3 years, 5 years?
Well, the plan for the business, so like I told you, like the mission was about making legal services more accessible to startups and small businesses. And we really think like we can be Australia-wide go-to online provider for all startups and small businesses. At the moment, we reckon we've scratched the surface of the market, but there's all these sort of suburban lawyers and traditional lawyers out there servicing their local geographies. And we think that at least for business legal services, all of them can be replaced by one massive kind of online provider. So we want to grow and be that, and huge market. We think, we can probably be 10 times the size we are now just doing that. We're also looking at going to corporate businesses. Now that we've developed this tech-powered law firm model that's really efficient, we want to help the corporates as well with their simple legal services and potentially look overseas as well. I think law is a very regional sort of business model, but there's places we could go. UK is one that we're in the early stages of thinking about. So just grow it a lot more. Like the vision is to make this a big scalable law firm, not a tiny little boutique thing. And right now we're on the journey there, but we're still a fairly small business by those standards of where we want to be. That's a question that comes up a lot in law. When's AI going to take over lawyers and replace the need for the humans? I'm pretty into the technology side of things, and I think we're pretty far off like real artificial intelligence replacing what the best lawyers do, which is provide that really human experience of like empathy and understanding a customer's problem and breaking things down. Whereas like light AI, so automation and things like that, which already exist now, that stuff's going to and is having a big impact on law in terms of getting rid of all the admin I was describing of printing out and photocopying, and even what legal secretaries do and a lot of those administrative duties. That can all be automated and be replaced with sort of workflow automation. We do that already, so we don't have any of those sort of roles. We've automated everything that you can automate. So I think like that kind of AI, if you would even call it AI, is having an impact in terms of making lawyers' lives easier. But in terms of the evil robot that will replace the lawyer, I think very far away. And I don't even know what it'll look like. Who knows what will happen before that? Aliens could visit us before that. The super intelligence exists. Yeah.
All right.
I play in a electronic rock hip hop band. Try that. Every single genre you can imagine.
Yeah.
And I play bass and produce like beats and things like that in the band. So
you're currently in a band.
Yeah, currently.
What's the band called?
Dream Cities.
Cool. Do you guys play gigs sometimes or?
Yeah, like we take it pretty seriously.
Okay.
It's definitely more than a hobby sort of thing. So I've been in that band for a couple of years. We released our album at the beginning of this year.
Nice.
And have played a bunch around Sydney and Melbourne, and we're working on album 2 when we have time.
Oh, nice.
So yeah,
it'll be fun to have the band along sometime.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
They would love to do it.
Thanks for hanging with us on the Convo couch, and thank you to Alex for coming along.
Thanks.
Don't forget to subscribe on the links below, check out SPRINTLAW's website, and see you next time.
Hi, how's it going? I'm Alex, the co-founder of SPRINTLAW. Excited to be here talking about SPRINTLAW and our journey. It's been interesting to sort of reflect on where we've come as a business, growing from a small little apartment operation into a company, with a team. And I think it's good to take time when you're on your journey as an entrepreneur to reflect and think about all the different things you've learned. Sometimes you can get lost in the thick of it, and you've got to remember to enjoy the journey while it's happening. Sing one of my songs. I can't. I have the worst voice. I play bass guitar. Start a company. It's a really good idea. You can make a lot of money and maybe a big impact too.